West Virginia!
Where the spirit of 1.8 million West Virginians wills you to victory. Other places have pro teams, but in this state, the Mountaineers are a way of life.
When I competed and wore that number, I competed for the state and for the people, not just for the university.
Now, let's roll out the carpet and bring on the Mountaineers.
Pittsburgh's three.
Yes!
Alexander. Robinson comes goal. It's a dunk right in his face.
Send it in, Joe!
Butler into the lane, into traffic. It goes again! West Virginia has won its first Big East championship.
So long, Big Blue. Hello, Golden Blue. The West Virginia Mountaineers are going to the Final Four.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into the CRW WVU basketball post-game show here following the game over Buffalo on the Country Roads webcast. As always, I'm Jordan Cruz here following West Virginia's 96-78 win over Buffalo to improve to 9-2 on the 2022-2023 season. I'll run through some of the stats here momentarily, but before I do, just want to encourage you guys, as always, drop your questions, comments, concerns in the chat, thoughts on the game. Anything else you want to talk about there, of course, you're encouraged to always drop that in there. And if you're in here on the YouTube side, of course, I'm streaming on the Country Roads webcast, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch pages. But if you're in here on the YouTube side, drop a like on the video, hit that thumbs up button, really helps us. And subscribe if you haven't already. But go ahead, drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm going to look at some of these numbers here. But as I get those pulled up, just kind of give some of my brief overall thoughts from watching this one. I actually got to watch this whole game. As you guys know, I usually listen to a lot of these on the radio, or at least parts of them on the radio. Didn't get to catch them. I got to watch this whole game though. But just kind of first half, I think Buffalo was really scrappy. They stayed in it. Wanted to show West Virginia they could play with them. I don't know if at halftime Bob Huggins, had a message to the team or what, but I think in the second half, West Virginia made it a point to come out and show Buffalo that they couldn't play with them and that they wasn't going to let them hang around like that anymore, and finally was able to pull away. I think specifically talking about the big men, I liked their performances in this game. We'll talk about it more when we get to the numbers. But in the first half, the guy from British Columbia, the British guy, the tall guy, what was his name? Jack, I think, for Buffalo. I believe he had 13 in the first half, if I'm not mistaken. Career high for him. Was kind of dominating down low. And I think Jimmy Bell took that personally. I don't know if maybe some things were said to him at halftime about that, but he was really a man possessed in the second half. We saw the best version of Jimmy Bell that we've seen. And if that's just a tip of the iceberg of his potential for moving forward in the season, then that's going to be a huge bright spot for this team. And the sky's definitely the limit there. And I think tonight you saw kind of glimpses of what some of your guys can really do. I mean, Eric Stevenson had an awesome night. Trey Mitchell had an awesome night. And so did, like I said, Jimmy Bell as well. So if you get all three of them on one night, that's big. And for West Virginia to come out here with an 18-point win over Buffalo, after the first half that they had, which was kind of lackluster, I think we could all agree. And to do it without Emmett Matthews, who I've said in my opinion here was the glue guy, I thought was pretty impressive, because I think, to the naked eye, especially up until maybe 8 minutes left in the second half, this was probably the worst, or one of the worst performances we've seen from this team this season. And still for them to, get it together in the last 8 minutes that they did and go on the huge run. To drop my phone in the floor, but to go on that big run to pull away and to where some of their stars took over, Eric Stevenson hitting shots. And I thought they really cranked up the defense there in that latter portion as well. But Jimmy Bell was just unstoppable there towards the end. And just kind of, that's some of my off top of my head thoughts there. But go to the comment here. See somebody popping up here. Eric Cruz, what's going on, Dad? Bell played much stronger in the second half. Also, I believe we were better when Toussaint came in. Yeah, I don't know why. It seemed like they didn't play him as much in this one as they typically do. I know in the first half he was in there for a little bit, and then didn't see him for a while. And then second half finally started playing a little bit more. And I agree. I think he's definitely a spark. And that's one of the things Huggins talked about was bench scoring needs to improve. I think we saw better bench scoring in this game. That was one of the reasons West Virginia was able to ultimately pull away, I think, is guys like Waggy stepped up off the bench. And then Seth Wilson had his best game of the season. Haven't seen him have a game that good since last year. And then, of course, like you said, Toussaint always giving you that spark off the bench. He took a couple of charges, had a couple of rebounds, had a couple of assists, and just, really does give you that spark off the bench. So I agree. Toussaint's an important part of this team. I think this team is a team where they can do things in a lot of different ways. I mean, you look last game against UAB, your guards were the ones you were talking about, Kedrian Johnson having 17 points. Now in this one, it's kind of your big men, Trey Mitchell and Jimmy Bell leading you in scoring outside of course, the awesome performance from Eric Stevenson, which I think you can get a lot more of because tonight we saw Eric Stevenson not be in foul trouble. And that's one of the things I've talked about, on the CRW Hoops podcast was if we could find a way to keep Eric Stevenson out of foul trouble, he could really light up the scoreboard potentially because he was leading the team in scoring, but it had almost 4 personal fouls in every game. So I think it's a team that can hurt you in a variety of ways. And we saw a little bit of that, tonight. We've seen it a little bit early in the season. West Virginia's done a good job here in non-conference play to get to 9-2, one more game left in non-conference play before Big 12 play starts up. And that's when you're really going to learn just how good you can really be there, I do believe. But looking at some of the numbers in this game, we'll go over these before we get too much further into this. Of course, don't like to keep these post-game shows dragging on too long because still want to have some things to get into more in-depth wise on the CRW Hoops podcast episode, which of course the next one will not be releasing until after the game against Stony Brook, which is coming up on the 22nd. Talk more about that in a second. But as far as stats for this game, West Virginia shot the basketball really well overall. I mean, basically 52% from the field, 51.6, and then 42% from the three-point line was what was really impressive. 22 or 33 from the free throw line. So this is the second consecutive game the Mountaineers have really shown ability to attack the rim and get to the free throw line. Had a great advantage in fouls. They didn't commit a lot themselves, especially in the second half. And then we're in the bonus from about 7 minutes on, in the second half for the final 7 minutes of the game. So really took advantage of that, got to the line a lot, 33 times. That's awesome for the Mountaineers. And then rebounding advantage, I saw a huge effort from West Virginia to do a better job of rebounding in this game. I mentioned Bob Huggins talking about the bench scoring needing to improve. He also said rebounding is one of the things he wanted to see improve. I think, to me, if that's the two areas that I would have said if it was me, would have been rebounding and limiting turnovers. One of those West Virginia did, one of those didn't. But the one that they did do was they rebounded the basketball better in this game. They actually ended up out-rebounding Buffalo by 11. And I thought West Virginia did a good job on the offensive glass. They out-rebounded Buffalo 15-9 on the offensive glass. And, I can think of a sequence where Trey Mitchell and Mo Waggy both got offensive rebounds on one possession for West Virginia. Love to see that. And then Jimmy Bell, as we mentioned in the second half, was really eating up the offensive glass, getting some offensive rebounds, getting some and one putbacks. Just awesome effort from the Mountaineer big men on the offensive glass. I thought we saw tonight better positioning, better job boxing out, and looked more like a Huggins team with the way they were rebounding the basketball tonight. And hopefully that continues to be a trend moving forward and isn't just an anomaly for this one game. Assists, pretty even, 17 for the Mountaineers, 16 for Buffalo, 6 steals for WVU, 8 steals for Buffalo, 3 blocks for Buffalo, 1 for WVU. And turnovers, here's the key to me. West Virginia needs to get their turnovers down. Like I said, I would love to see them get it down to single digits, and I feel like they can really be competitive. But I think if they want to have a chance to compete for the Big 12 as far as having a chance to win this conference, they're going to have to get it to at least 10 or less. And they committed 14 in this game. Far too many. I think they did a better job going throughout, but they had 6 turnovers, in the first 5-6 minutes of the game. So, judging by that, 8 throughout the rest of the game when you have 6 in the first, 10 minutes isn't too bad. But you need to get that down to where you're not having those long stretches like you had that stretch where you had the 6 turnovers early and you just have maybe the 8, 9, 10 a game. And you can live with that if you're West Virginia because you're forcing, 14 or more turnovers a game. And this one forcing Buffalo into 15 turnovers. And as I said, West Virginia with a big advantage in the foul category. Buffalo committed 27 fouls on the night. West Virginia only to 13. So that's kind of the team stats. Let me go here to the chat with you guys before I break down some of the individual numbers. Sorgi, what's going on, man? Sorgi Stories, good to see you in here as always. Appreciate you, man. He says, what's up, Jordan? Let's go Mountaineers. Let's go Mountaineers indeed. Another big win, 9-2 on the season. Looking good so far in this. He said he was not watching this one. I've been streaming soccer and NFL all day. Did the Mountaineers show any improvements or anything like that? I think the major thing to tell you if you didn't watch this game is that the West Virginia got this 96-78 win without Emmett Matthews. We saw that knee injury kind of occur against UAB. He still went on to play the rest of that game, but it was in question. After that, what I'm hoping is that maybe they're just resting it, letting him heal up, getting to 100% before conference play starts for these final 2 games against Buffalo and Stony Brook. We'll see what happens moving forward. But I think West Virginia getting the 18-point win without him was big. And as far as improvements, I definitely think you saw big improvements from Jimmy Bell. Awesome game from him. And, some of the guys that can really score for West Virginia showed that in this game. Trey Mitchell and Eric Stevenson come to mind. But I'm getting into the individual numbers here in a second, Sorgi, and probably learn a little bit more about who's kind of really stood out. But to me, those were the 3 guys off the top of my head, really. Trey Mitchell, Eric Stevenson, and Jimmy Bell, and definitely improvements from Jimmy Bell. But it's been a good NFL day. I caught a little bit of those, several of those early games. A lot of them had some crazy endings. It's been a pretty good day, so I don't blame you for catching up on that. John Kelly says, let's go Mountaineers. Nice win. One more before Big 12 play. Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you can get one more over Stony Brook before going into conference play and when things really heat up there. He says they have a lot of potential, almost got to 100 points without Matthews. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing to me, especially watching the first half, because I think at one point I know it was less than 10 minutes to go in the first half, and the score was like 35-35 or something around that range. And so I'm thinking, man, West Virginia's not going to get up, over 80 like they have been doing here, lately. They're really struggling to score in this game as well. But I thought they were playing some good defense at the time. But then ultimately in the second half, I think West Virginia really caught fire. They went on some stretches where they were really hitting a lot of shots. Trey Mitchell doing some good things, Eric Stevenson, Jimmy Bell, Seth Wilson, the list goes on. When you shoot over 40% from the three-point line, you're really shooting the basketball well. So it was impressive, nearly 100 points without Matthews. I agree, John Kelly. Dr. Piv, how's it going? Good win. Buffalo scrappy. Ball handling was sloppy at times, but turned it on big time last 10 minutes. Yeah, 100%. And thanks for always coming on and chiming in, man. But I 100% agree with you. I think to me, that's the thing that I'm watching on this team moving forward is hopefully rebounding continues to improve. Defense, I think, is still we're going to see against tougher competition. But I think it looks, certainly improved compared to last season, but don't know how good it is yet. Definitely agree with Bob Huggins. Need to improve the rebounding and need to limit turnovers, in my opinion. Like you said, ball handling is sloppy at times. I think, whether it be, not just dribbling, but passing, I think we need to, have some more crisp passes. At times, this team passes the ball really well. That's what's strange. You see like a possession we had earlier in the game. They moved the ball around the horn. Eric Stevenson had a look at a 3, instead made an extra pass to Kedrian Johnson, who then ended up hitting Josiah Harris, who was cutting on a no-look for a dunk. Excellent ball movement, just a beautiful, pretty as a picture possession there. So you see things like that from this team at times where they'll move the ball great to get a guy an open look, and you're like, oh, man, this team's great at passing. But then also you see him, throw a lob pass that ends up getting intercepted when he could have easily made a bounce pass to the guy. Just little things like that, and it leaves you scratching your head a little bit. But I think, this team's got to do a better job limiting turnovers. I agree with you there. Moving forward, John Kelly says, was a nice thing they put together at halftime with Coach K, Roy Williams, Calipari, amongst others, congratulating Huggins on his Hall of Fame induction. Yeah, that was really cool to see. I think that they actually had released that earlier, like at his actual induction, I believe, because I think I saw it on YouTube a while back. But I was glad to see the halftime report there on ESPN Plus really focus on that because it was, Hall of Fame day for Bob Huggins today. I'm glad you brought that up, John Kelly. Didn't want to fail to mention that. Really some good tributes to him, and the halftime report was really focused on that. They played those clips with all the legendary college coaches congratulating Bob Huggins, and that was really cool to see. So yeah, I agree with you. That was awesome. Sorgi says he can put us on mute for here a bit, doing things in the Sorgi house. Hey, that's what the playback's for, man. No problem there. Just glad you're tuning in and appreciate that always, Sorgi, man. Take care, brother. But let me look at some of these individual numbers real quick, and I'll get up out here before too much longer, guys. Like I said, try and keep these as brief as possible, but as always, encourage drop any more questions, comments, concerns you got there in the chat. After I finish these final individual statistics, I want to talk about a little bit. I'll catch up on any chats you got there before we get up out of here on this post-game reaction show following the win over Buffalo. 1 second, they're going to have to wet my whistle real quick. Much better, much better. Actually, not coffee tonight, surprisingly, for you guys that follow it regularly. I know. Actually, just good old water. It's usually one of the two, though, but as you all know. But individual stats, like I said, Jimmy Bell, man possessed in the second half, really just showing his size and strength. I mean, he's 6'10", nearly 300 pounds. You know, he was 360 plus pounds when he came to West Virginia, lost 80 pounds throughout the offseason months to get into playing shape. And really, you know, like, of course, Huggins' famous quote, of course, Jimmy's got great feet, but he really does, you know, the way he moves in the low post, and he's just continuing to get better and better. And I think he's a player that's not just scratching the surface, excuse me, of what his potential can be. And I think we saw a little bit of a glimpse of that tonight, more so than we have seen at all. There was WVU career, obviously season high for him in points with 18, also 10 rebounds. So great double from him, all around performance. Awesome. But a lot of that coming in the second half. So I think if I'm not mistaken, about 17 of those points came in the second half. Correct me if I'm wrong. 17 points and 7 rebounds came in the second half, if I'm not mistaken. I think I saw that on Twitter during the game. Could be wrong, but either way, the majority of his points and rebounds coming in the second half. So just think if he could dominate like that for a full game, and if he continues to be that type of player that Mountaineers can feed in the low post and that can snag down boards. And to me, the one thing that I really liked about his performance, though, was his from the free throw line. So they don't got it listed on here, but I know he shot at least 11 free throws on the night. I want to say he was around 7 of 11. He's really worked to improve that free throw shooting, and I think that's going to be a factor for him moving forward in the season, because he's probably a player that other teams are going to, you know, maybe hack at times, and he's going to get fouled, just the nature of the position and the nature of his size down low there. So he's going to go to the line, and if he can continue to be a good free throw shooter, that's really going to help him and the Mountaineers moving forward. And then Trey Mitchell, like I said, we know his potential. 17.6 rebounds, got really hot, had a run there of his own that helped West Virginia stretch out the lead in the second half that they kind of never looked back on and kept building upon that. But 0-3 from the three-point line, kind of uncharacteristically of him. But as you can see, he really can score in a variety of ways. We saw him even bring the ball up the court at time when West Virginia had to break a press. So he's a 6'9" guy that can score in the post, you know, with baby hooks. We saw that in this game. We saw him score in the mid-range. We've seen him score off the dribble, and we've seen him score threes in the past. So he can score any way that he needs to. And I think Trey Mitchell is going to continue to be a force for this team. And I think as conference play goes, we may see the Mountaineers rely on him even more the further we get into that. Kobe Johnson, who got the start today in place of Emmett Matthews. Pretty good game all around. I mean, 1 of 1 from three-point line, 3 of 3 from the field, 7 points and 4 rebounds. Can't really ask for much more than that as he's filling in for Emmett Matthews, who I've called the glue guy. And then Eric Stevenson, of course, we know, fan favorite. Amazing shooter, just his forms of, you know, work of art to watch him shoot the basketball. It's just really a fun guy to watch play as well, with as passionate as he is. And when he gets hot, just look out. He started this game hot, 5 points immediately right off the bat. Nice mid-range jumper, which pretty much automatically count that. If I see him coming off that curl screen mid-range or pulling up mid-range, it's almost money automatic for him. But then hit a contested three, and that just kind of hot pace continued throughout the game. Even sat for a long period in the second half and still finished with 22 points, 5 of 8 from the three-point line, 8 of 13 from the field. Kedrian Johnson, 8 points, 7 assists. He continues to have a really great senior season. I think he's much improved, and we're seeing the best version of Kedrian Johnson that I've seen at all. And I love the performance that Keedy is putting on. You know, follows up his 17-point performance against UAB and, you know, guarding Jelly Walker with another good performance here in this one. And then the West Virginia bench, I think, was the story of the game, because we need to continue to see improvement in scoring from the West Virginia bench. They've been getting it mainly from Joe Toussaint and no one else. But Seth Wilson's a guy I wanted to mention, because he saw more playing time in this game than he really has at any point in this season due to kind of Emmett Matthews being out. He got to see more action, and he really took advantage of that, shot the basketball well, some really hard shots too, fadeaways off one leg, things like that, and they were pure. They went right in there, 2 of 4 from the three-point line, 4 of 7 from the field overall, 10 points for him. And then Joe Toussaint, not the best scoring night for him, but 4 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. But even when he doesn't fill up the stat sheet, he really does those little things, those intangibles for you, I think. Coming off the bench, Josiah Harris, 2 points, as I said, the one dunk that I talked about earlier. Sumnick got in late, had a couple rebounds. Saw him, Jamel King, and Josiah Davis check in the final couple minutes for the Mountaineers. And then Mo Waggy, one of his better performances that as of late, you know, he started the season hot, kind of been in a bit of a down spell since then, but at least he bounced back in this game. 8 points, 3 rebounds, and did some good things for the Mountaineers off the bench. But that's kind of a look at the numbers. As I said, West Virginia 9-2 now in 2022-2023. Get ready to close out the post-game show here before too long. Let me catch up with you guys in the chat real quick before I do. See if we got anything else in here. Eric Cruz, hoping NCAA reconsider Perez not being eligible. Yeah, you guys, I haven't done a video on this just because, I mean, it's kind of just such a fluid situation that I thought about doing a video, and then by the time I was going to, Manhattan had already released a statement. I feel like there's going to be a lot of back and forth, and I feel like something's got to give sooner or later, whether he's deemed eligible later in the season or what have you. But of course, for those of you that don't know, I'm sure everyone knows by now, Jose Perez's waiver was denied. It was believed that Manhattan wasn't exactly supporting the waiver. They released a statement saying they complied with everything, but also just because they complied doesn't mean they were necessarily supporting it, despite, not being against it, quote unquote, which is what I think they said. But for now, Jose Perez still ineligible. Complete and total BS is all we can say, guys. I mean, NCAA's got to reconsider it or something, maybe. I mean, because there's all kinds of cases you can look at. What was it, DeSosa at Kansas a few years ago? Someone even mentioned Jarrett Dagey this offseason in football, went to Western Kentucky in the spring and then went to Troy in the fall and was still able to play for them. And, there was no coach firing or anything there. He was just moving. Jose Perez's coach was fired a week before the start of the season. He has a legitimate reason. It's just so crazy that his waiver was denied when you see the NCAA granting all these other waivers. I just saw a guy get a 9th year of eligibility in football, I believe, for Oregon as well. I'm not saying that those cases don't deserve it. I'm just saying where's the consistency? That's all I'm saying. John Kelly says, we are appealing. This team would be incredible with Perez. Yeah, West Virginia is appealing. Hopefully it turns out the right way and we can't get him because, just imagine this team with Jose Perez as well. It's really kind of hard to wrap your head around because this is a team that can be really good right now as is. And if you add Jose Perez to the mix, who knows how good you could potentially be talking. And William Strawderman with a great point. If Perez transferred to Kansas, he'd be eligible, and that's the BS. Exactly. If our jerseys didn't say West Virginia and they said Kansas, Duke, Kentucky, Baylor, North Carolina, he would be eligible already, guaranteed. And that's exactly why everyone is up in arms as well. They should be. Adam W says, I had to work and miss the game. We look decent. Yes and no. I'll say, no Emmett Matthews. So you score 96 points, you win by 18. It's tough to complain. But the way I put it is kind of, honestly, maybe one of the worst performances of the season from this team, but they still come out with an 18-point win. Specifically, like the first 20 to 30 minutes of the game, first half and first part of the second half, they, a little bit lackadaisical, I guess you could say. It was a battle, but then they really, once they turned it on, it was over and they never looked back. And from, the final 10 minutes of the second half, they looked great. So, yes and no, I guess, to answer your question, Adam W. But a 18-point win, you're 9-2 on the season. You're playing some good basketball. Can't really complain too much. John Kelly says second half we were fierce. Bell was a beast under the basket. Absolutely. Love seeing Stevenson hustle after turnover to get block at the other end. Yes, that's one thing that I want to point out about this team. I'm glad you brought that up because Stevenson, like you said, late in the game, turned the ball over, then came back, got a block on the other end. I believe it was called a goaltend, if I'm not mistaken. Questionable whether it was or not. But also earlier in the game, you saw the same thing from Joe Toussaint. He turned the ball over, ran back down to the other end of the court, took a charge. And just the effort that these players show to hustle and do things like that is kind of why this team is so beloved right now, even though it's so early in the season. And we feel just a different type of way about this Mountaineer basketball team than we have any in the past couple of seasons, I feel like. Let's see. We got anything else? Adam W says, didn't realize we didn't have Emmett hurt. Yes. The knee that he hurt against UAB, I know he finished playing the game, but they asked him questions about it after the game, kind of deflected those. So not really known exactly how extensive the knee injury is. I don't think it's too bad for him, to finish out playing that game against UAB. Personally, what I think they may be doing is kind of sitting him, letting him rest up, get to 100% in these final two non-conference games, being this one against Buffalo and then the next one against Stony Brook, or at least maybe that's just kind of what I'm wishfully thinking, I guess. But for now, a little bit of a knee injury that they're resting him for, and we'll see what happens moving forward. Like I said, they hadn't really answered too many questions about it, but we'll see. We'll see. I feel like if it was anything extensive, they probably would have made some type of announcement. So I'm thinking he'll be back before too long. But nonetheless, appreciate you guys tuning. Awesome engagement for this post-game reaction. Like I said, try and keep these as brief as possible. But all in all, West Virginia 96-78 win over Buffalo to move to 9-2 on the 2022-2023 season. Appreciate you guys tuning in here to the CRW post-game reaction show here on the Country Roads webcast, whether you're tuned in on the Facebook, Twitch, or YouTube. But one more time before we get out here, if you're tuned in on the YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, drop a like on the video. It really helps its performance and will help future videos performances here on the channel. And subscribe if you haven't already. Helps us, helps you, helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. But that being said, really appreciate you guys tuning in here on any one of the 3 platforms that this is streaming on. Like I said, we'll have a post-game reaction show out for the game against Stony Brook, which is on the, 22nd. It's going to be, so this Thursday, West Virginia's going to play Stony Brook. Stony Brook's currently 4-8. That one's going to tip at 6, and it's going to be on ESPN Plus as well. So post-game show for that one, looking at around 8:30 to 9 o'clock range. Do another post-game reaction show for that one. And then we'll have a CRW Hoops podcast releasing sometime after that game. In between those, though, plenty of other content coming from us here on the Country Roads webcast. Of course, football offseason in full swing, still providing transfer portal updates, roster updates, coaching staff updates, things like that as they continue to progress. Be sure and check those out if you haven't already. Also going to release a Country Roads webcast podcast episode about the final season stats for West Virginia in the football season that just ended, and also do some fun Christmas themed things, Christmas movie ranking list, West Virginia football Christmas wish list, stuff like that in that podcast episode. So plenty of content for you guys coming down the line. Like I said, Stony Brook next on the slate for the Mountaineers. Hopefully they can get their 10th win of the season and move to 10-2 before starting conference play. For now, they are sitting at 9-2 on this season. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I'll get out of here, quit rambling on. But as always, I'm Jordan Cruz. And until next time, let's go Mountaineers.